Hi, I'm Newsday's engagement editor, Elaine Pignat, and this is columnist Dan Janison. We're here to discuss last night's primary results and what it means for the race to the White House moving forward. So Dan, was there anything about the results last night that surprised you?
Surprised. I was surprised that it wasn't surprising. Usually I have it completely wrong, and this time I actually had it right. I expected her to get in the high 50s. I expected Trump to get his more than 50% and big lion's share of delegates because there was really no one on the horizon to challenge him. And so pretty much it went as expected. Now, you go 6 months ago, none of us expected to see Trump in here, and none of us expected to see Sanders still alive at this point. So, it's been a humbling experience in the long term.
So where was each candidate strongest?
Well, geographically, Trump really did impressively on Long Island. A large share of his vote total came from there. I did a piece this morning that Bernie Sanders, because of the way New York is arranged and how it is run by Democrats, Bernie Sanders actually got more votes in the state than Donald Trump got in the state, even though Bernie Sanders lost to Clinton, who did an incredible million-plus votes. But on Long Island, Trump actually, it looks like he added up more votes than Clinton did in Nassau and Suffolk, which is could be a harbinger of what happens in November.
Okay. So did Clinton and Trump get a hometown boost, do you think?
Absolutely. They're the two who vote here, and they're the two who won. It might have been it might have had something to do with her having been senator here for 8 years. He is a known quantity in the tabloids, and he's a lot of the hype around him is centered in New York media.
Okay, so that leads to the next question: how much do you think Clinton's Senate service played into this?
Well, she established herself in New York as a political player, and went to Washington, and in the process, as Bill Clinton's wife, she became a powerhouse almost immediately in the state, so that there's still a remaining presence in, for lack of a better word, the Democratic Party machine. Cuomo very much on board, Schumer, Gillibrand, all the bigs in the state. I don't think she missed a single county leader. I don't know of a county chairperson who went for Sanders. So as far as when we throw around the word establishment, as far as the Democratic establishment was concerned, it was solidly with Clinton.
Okay. Do you know what the racial breakdown of the votes was, and if that really
There are guesses.
it?
There are guesses. I mean, she's done well among African Americans, and presumably she did well in African American neighborhoods. Bear in mind that back in '08, when she was losing to the person who became the first black president, she held on to her institutional support in New York almost to the end.
Right.
She still had David Patterson and Charles Rangel in her camp. So it's she's pretty comfortable here.
Yeah, she has won a lot of elections in New York. So what do you think is really driving that support?
Won elections in New York. She basically, as soon as she came into town back in 2000, the competition all died. I don't even remember the degree to which she might have had a primary. I think there was a dentist in Brooklyn who ran against her in the primary for U.S. Senate, and then she won that election fairly easily and was on her way.
Right. Okay. Should her lead last night have been wider?
I don't know. There are limitations on how well she's going to do. She does have a high unfavorability rating among normal Americans. And by normal Americans, I mean like just about like the general populace. A lot of people still don't trust her and so forth. So, you know, hitting near 60% is really about as much as she could expect to achieve.
Okay. Was Trump's easy victory a sign of how poor the field is, or his actual strength?
There's nobody there. Again, Ted Cruz had already insulted New York, and I don't think he attracts much interest beside the point.
Right.
Kasich, nice guy, won Manhattan, I believe. I think he got the congressional district of Manhattan, which gave him 3 electoral votes. But it was really all Trump from the beginning. It's as if Trump is the establishment here.
Okay. You mentioned Cruz. If he hadn't blasted New York values, do you think that would have made a difference?
Not a big one.
Okay.
He's from a part of the party that that the Republicans in New York don't really resemble.
Okay. What about Kasich? His vote total, was his vote total more a vote for him or protest against Trump?
It had to be something of a protest against Trump, because he's just not that well known, even though he's the Ohio governor.
Okay. Does his relative strength here prove how the New York GOP is relatively moderate?
Probably. Bear in mind, Trump is spent a long time as a Democratic donor, and he's not the kind of he's not a Ted Cruz ideological Republican. I don't think if Rand Paul had gone the distance, he would have done very well here because, as you say, it's a different type of Republican Party.
Right. Okay. Do you think Sanders, Cruz, or Kasich will drop out before the conventions?
Tough to say. I can see where they would all have arguments to stay in, figuring that anything can happen. Sanders is sort of a message guy, and he repeats the same message, and it's almost as if he's in it for the political revolution and the vision, and he pulls hard to the left, supposedly. So I don't think he has any incentive to get out, and I don't think Cruz and Kasich do, when you consider that Trump is not terribly popular among a lot of Republicans still.
Right. So do you think this win, especially with him getting the majority of New York delegates, do you think that'll lock Trump up for the nomination? Will he get the
He isn't there
support?
yet.
Okay.
But it's hard to believe that he didn't get a big boost last night, and he's heading into some other East Coast states where he stands a pretty good chance of winning.
Okay. What about Sanders? Do you think there are any, does it lock up the nomination for Clinton, and do you think there are any scenarios where Sanders can catch up?
It's getting narrower. It has been getting narrower for him. Anything can happen. I mean, acts of God, death, hurricanes. But the way it's going is it looks right now, gun to the head, like Trump against Clinton.
Okay. What do the results mean for the race to the White House going forward? What do you see happening?
Probably more of the same. The big question for him is what happens at the convention. The big question for her is whether she can get Bernie Sanders voters in the general election.
Okay. Do the results in the Skelos race, where it looks like the Democrats may pick up the seat from the Republicans, tell us anything about whether Trump hurts down ballot candidates?
Well, it's he he pulled a lot more votes in the fourth. Let me back up. The congressional district where that Senate race took place seemed to have a higher turnout on both sides. And it's tough to say whether, for example, Kaminsky brought out Clinton voters or vice versa.
Okay.
Or whether McGrath voters brought out Trump voters. You know, it's hard to detach that. We'll probably be looking at the numbers in the next few days.
Okay. Here is a follower question from William Welk-Ragone. How do all the issues with voting sites in the final count weigh on the outcome of our process, and what does it mean as an effect on our districts in other states?
Yeah, that's going to have to be investigated. You know, when you have these purges like happened in Brooklyn with the rolls, the procedure is to give out affidavit ballots and let people vote, and then make a determination as to whether the vote is valid. And I don't see a lot of challenges coming from either camp. So the outcome and the delegate allocation could be affected if there's a surge of absentee ballots one way or another. I think it's going to be difficult to tease out, but I do know that the affidavit ballots should be counted. I don't know if they will or what's going to happen to them.
Okay. I guess we'll just have to see how it plays out. Here's a question from Don Pollard. He's wondering if the server issues coming up are going to end up hurting Clinton. And he says it doesn't really... So far, we've heard with a wink and a nod from all the folks in Washington that it's not going to end up in criminal charges. You never know. It's one more thing that in a general election campaign they can throw at her, or that Trump or anybody else can throw at her as something that was mishandled or worse. So we're not going to hear the end of that until at least November. But it's tough to say if there's any tangible effect right now. Okay. So that's all for our followers' questions. Do you have anything that you want to tell our followers about this race moving forward?
Well, look at Pennsylvania. That'll be the next big state thing. And something interesting to watch for when the primary is over with and the candidates stop appealing to strictly party voters. It'll be interesting to see how they change their positions.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for following along. We'll be live again tomorrow with Newsday cartoonist Matt Davies.